Good morning. I've had a lot of people say that they miss seeing the videos, and someone was even asking how I was doing. I'm doing fine. I've just been very busy and haven't had a lot going on around here because it's just the dog days of summer. But I'll do a quick update video today for everybody. So I'm raising magpie ducklings. They're an endangered breed. And they reached the point that they can come out and play during the day. This pool has changed completely yesterday. That's how dirty even baby ducklings make it in one day. Hi, babies. I really like magpies. They're kind of like Indian runners in that they sometimes have a much more upright posture. But they're a little heavier of a duck. They have great personalities. They're very comical. Most of mine are not properly marked still though for the breed standard. They should have yellow feet and beaks. But they do have, one of the big faults is having white at the tail, and none of them do, so that's good. But we'll see. But I'm hoping to be able to help conserve the breed. To give you an idea of the difference, the goose pond from yesterday is only this dirty. You can actually still see the bottom of it and things. So these are my two older ducks. I have a khaki Campbell and a Swede. They're both gentleman ducks, and so they have this little bachelor pad for now while I wait for the babies to grow up and to see how many girls I have and all. They're very nice little boys, and they love being out on the grass, so I decided to just put them out on the grass with this tractor we made out of an old dog run. And they're surrounded by electric fence, so they're pretty safe. And they ate a little bit over the night, didn't you? Not very much. That's their treat bowl. And their water was also shiny clean last night. If you were thinking about getting ducks, just be aware they're very dirty. Now in North Carolina, one of our big things is it's very sunny, very intense sun, so I have sunshades on everything. So even with their tarp, I just wanted them to have an additional shady area over here. And my neighbor trains Australian Shepherds in competition, so you'll hear her calling out commands in the background because she's training this morning. Now these guys keep their pond a little cleaner. They just have, these are really nice for 1 or 2 ducks. They're the tubs that they use to mix cement, and I just get them from Home Depot. And they make a really good size. Like both ducks can get in, and when they haven't splashed all the water out, take a really good dunk. So Mr. Gray and the Easter eggers share this spot. Every evening Mr. Gray does laps. He really loves to run and run and run in the evening. He gets too hot to really exercise during the day. So I did have him having this to himself, but he only uses it at night. That's the sound of a goose, if anyone wondered. These are quiet geese, so they can get pretty loud. But yeah, Mr. Gray is already feeling the humidity, and he's just gonna sit there and rest until the sun goes down tonight, and then he'll start running around like a maniac. Right, Mr. Gray? So these are my babies. Hey, Bitsy. Hi, Bitsy. These are my babies. These are my babies. They're happiest when they have people all around them. They're people, so they consider us part of the flock. And so their happiest moment is when all 3 of us are here and they can chew our shoes and hassle us. And because of their chewing habit, and because the bottom of your shoes can carry things, I do not wear these shoes anywhere but around the animals. What you doing, baby? You don't know. So geese are very curious, and I've gotten them some baby toys to play with. And they do a lot of outdoor supervised running around time because they just have a lot of energy and a lot of curiosity, and they like to keep moving. This is Gilbert. He's head goose. What's up, Gilbert? He's also my least affectionate tame goose. He's busy keeping an eye on everything. But as you can see, he's not by any means not tame. He just doesn't like to cuddle like Deborah still. Yes, yes, yes. That's my girl, huh? If I sit down on the ground, I'll have a lap full of geese in like 5 minutes. They like to cuddle. So we did recently add turkeys to the family. They're still young, so they're in a tractor, and I still shut them up in a pen at night as well, just so we make sure they don't get off in a corner by themselves or anything. And then I have 2 little Polish chicks who also think they're turkeys, and these guys will not be parted for anything. The turkeys cry and won't go to bed. The chickens cry and won't go to bed. So for now, they're still all together. But someday we need the chicks to figure out that they're not turkeys. So this is my least favorite thing, and that is the ants. We accidentally left this out overnight, and they got in it. So it's 8:30. All the animals are sorted, and it took about an hour and a half. That's because I enjoy spending time with them. If I wanted to rush, I could certainly get them done sooner. But it's time to get the garden work done before it's too hot. So my first stop is my longevity spinach. It is called spinach, but as you can see, it's kind of a rubbery leaf. You wouldn't want to really eat it raw. I eat some of the very small tender leaves raw on occasion, but mostly it's good for a spinach substitute in dishes you're cooking. But it has a lot of health benefits apparently. They've done some studies on it. I know my geese like to eat it, so I'll usually pick them a few fresh leaves, and they'll eat them along with their grasses. But it definitely loves it here. These were just cuttings that were little tiny twigs when I got here. And within 6 months, I mean, look how well they're doing. So I had washed all the dirt off my strawberries and put them in a box and brought them with me. They're doing okay, but they aren't really the right variety for this area, I don't think. And most people just plant them new every year that have like strawberry farms and don't try to save them, and they use a different variety. But I've gotten some strawberries off them, and they're kind of holding on, so that's good. I also brought some dahlia tubers with me, and this is one of them. And then my cuttings, as you can see, only one of my figs took, but a lot of the rest of my cuttings did okay. And that's my kale, still holding on. I thought it would have folded by now. I need to weed it again. I just cut all this grass at the beginning of the week, and then weed whacked like 3 days ago, and this is what it looks like. So I am battling the different squash bugs. Some of the squash have succumbed and some are holding on. The Easter eggers absolutely adore eating the vine borer bugs, if I can get them out, the little creepy worms. So gross looking. Anyway, but this one I've pulled like I think 10 squash vine borers out of. It's kind of still holding its own, but you can see it's getting a little bit rough. So I did plant a couple more crops because I can grow squash right up until like October here if I can keep it alive. So there's no sense. Maybe even into December depending on when the frost hits. So I am continuing to put in new crops. And I can't wait for this. This is my baby okra. My first okra is finally starting. I planted them a little late, I guess. And everyone else has got vast amounts of okra, and I've just got one baby coming on finally. The blossoms are really kind of pretty. I like the blossoms, even if I wouldn't like the plant. But I love eating okra, so. It is really actually pretty hard to grow tomatoes down here because it's a little too hot for them, and there are a lot of pests. So my tomatoes, on top of the growing conditions not being perfect, are also struggling with very poor soil. I had gotten some compost and it just wasn't finished, and it locked up the nutrients and was a disaster. So things are finally starting to kind of pull through, but this set of tomatoes, they're producing, but they're not fantastic. Of course, sweet potatoes. These are my leftovers, and they're doing pretty good. And I've got a couple more squash tucked in here. These are 8-ball. I did lose one of these as well to the squash bugs. Another greens option. This is an edible hibiscus, and I got it as one of those tissue culture plants from Baker Creek, and so it's doing pretty well. It's finally getting some growth on it. I'm really not planning to eat anything off of it until next year. This is a squash row that I've only got one squash transplanted. I have a bunch of baby starts to put in here. This is a fig I bought from Lowe's, I think. It wasn't terribly well rooted, and I thought I was going to lose it, but you can see it's putting out new growth, so I'm pretty excited about that. And then I just throw, whenever I have extra oats, I throw them over here in bare spots, because you might as well cover up the ground. And the cats like to eat oat grass, and the birds like to eat oat grass as a treat, so I keep growing little patches of it. It's a little too hot for it right now, but see, I've got little oats on there even. This is one thing that's been working pretty well for me. I have some chicken waterers that I didn't like, so I punched holes in the bottom plug and I fill it up, and you can see it's almost out. And the plants that have them are really thriving. In this case, we're starting to get some disease on the cucumbers just because that's what happens down here with older cucumbers. But you can see my cantaloupes. This is the first time I've been able to grow decent cantaloupes. So I have more longevity spinach here. And then I have some sweet potato slips from the sweet potato I brought from Maryland. They're doing really well. I've got more sweet potato slips here, and you can see the poor old sweet potato is still trying to push them out. Altogether, I think I got 20 or 30 slips off of them, so that's pretty good. And then these sweet potatoes here are tissue culture sweet potatoes from Baker Creek. They were a really rare variety, and I'm going to try to save at least one of the tubers to make my own next year. Over here is my herb row. Some of the things really thrive, some of them don't like it very much. My chamomiles in my raised planter that did so well back in Maryland. A little too hot here, I think, but it's struggling through. And then, oh, that was another, I have a whole bunch of grasshopper and Katie did things. So this, I'm hoping is my turmeric coming back, because it had died back to the ground, but that's where it was, so I'm hoping it's coming back. Stevia, lemongrass, some of the things that are a little harder to grow in Maryland are doing okay here. And this is my cutting. So that's my very own baby lavender I made myself. Kind of proud of him. Beans are not doing well. They were decimated by a bean beetle, and finally are catching on a little bit, but it's still a little bit of a struggle. But my black-eyed peas and my cowpeas are doing really well. And of course my peanuts are doing really well. This is a really rare peanut, so I only have a very small row. I'm going to have to save seed for next year. It's called, oh, I can't even pronounce the guy's name, but it's a black peanut. And then, of course, my black-eyed Susan vine. I always love them. Yellow squash is holding on. I did take squash vine borers out of 3 or 4 of them. But as you can see, I've got a lot of production coming on, as long as Noah manages to get to them first and kill them off. And of course, I have ground cherries again. I like them. Some people don't like the taste, but I think they taste good. Oh, and this is a new thing for me this year. Roselle. My shoes sound squishy if you hear a weird squishing sound. I got them all wet. So these are good for a tea, and it's apparently a really good tea, so I'm excited to try it. And finally, when I was beginning to give up hope, I'm finally getting little eggplants. So this was, again, that compost that was too hot. It locked up all the nutrients. I went through and I spread bunny manure, which is where Mr. Gray comes into the picture. He is very, very useful little fellow besides being adorable. And it helped them finally take off. So over here I was going to finish putting in, but I never finished putting in these self-watering tubs. And this one I didn't use sturdy enough containers underneath to fill in the void to hold the water reservoir, and it kind of collapsed down. And for whatever reason, this New Zealand spinach is not pest resistant. They have just attacked it. But these two are doing really well. This is called Jericho lettuce, and it's resistant to bolting. It was grown in the deserts of Israel. And this is another spinach, very similar to the longevity spinach. It's called Malabar. It's more of a vine. Again, it's supposed to be very nutrient dense, but I need to still finish mulching this row and making the rest of the tubs for here. I thought it'd be really nice to have greens in self-watering containers since it's so hard to keep things watered. And then here is my Armenian cucumber. So it will also take the place of the cucumber. And then my cucamelons, which have been amazing. I get a whole handful of cucamelons off them every day. They're doing really well. All right, so we went through the gates into the wilds. I did just cut this as well, except for that one little patch there, because I'm afraid I'll whack out my squash with the weed whacker. But onions are pretty much over. I pulled a bunch. I've got more. And I've got a second crop of okra there, and then my main crop of peanuts. And then here is my main squash row, and it's doing pretty well. I had a couple vine borers and I lost one plant here. And over here the same thing. I had a squash vine borer take out one of my plants, and then the rest are still here. So these are winter squash. And then I planted a few watermelons and then realized that my geese are just fanatics about watermelon, and so are the ducks. So I went and planted a whole nother little patch for them. My dill, which I just planted and is struggling along. This is my first crop of corn. I've harvested most of it. I just pulled 3 or 4 ears off for the geese. This corn was corn that I saved from a cob I got from the Amish last year, and it's pretty cool. It's got red stalks, and then most of the cobs are red too. So I'll try to save a little for seed, but the geese really love it. And then this is my main sweet potato bed, my main sunflower bed. And then these are my Mother Stoddard beans that did so well in Maryland last year. It's a little hot for them. They might need partial shade next year. So I only put in one 50-foot row, and I have enough seed to try again next year in another location if these don't produce, but it seems like they are starting a little. Then my cowpea and black-eyed pea row, which is kind of like a jungle of green at this moment. So here are my watermelon row, and as you can see, it got weedy and they started sprawling, so I haven't been messing with it too much. I pull out the biggest, tallest weeds when I see them. And then over here is another small watermelon row, not watermelon, sweet potato row, and my zinnia row. And these are the mammoth sunflowers that last year in Maryland stood like 20 feet tall. This is as mammoth as they're getting this year. And then this is my second crop of corn. They said you can plant a second crop of corn in July here in North Carolina, so I did. A little spotty on the germination. but I think it'll do okay. And that's pretty much it. That's the tour. Just been sitting here working and trying to get the land revitalized a little bit. So, and you can see I've got bees and little bees, and everyone's enjoying all the nectar and the kind of wildness of it. I've got some killdeer and different birds moving in the undisturbed back pasture now. As you can see, I'm just letting it grow out for now. This would eventually be the food forest, but for now it's just being left alone. So that's about it. Hope you all are gardening wherever you are.